I hear you.
How about now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
You can hear me? Can the audience hear
Yeah.
me?
Oh, we're live. Hi,
Yes.
everyone.
We're live. For some
Can
reason,
everyone hear Chris? Yeah.
yeah, for some reason, and thanks, Gary, for jumping in.
Of course.
For some reason, my board keeps defaulting to a different sound microphone. But anyway, this is like the second time it's happened. And anyway, that said, what I was telling everybody for the record is, I was a hostage negotiator for 11 years. Here it is, trained by the FBI with my name on it, by the way, for the record. And tonight, this case is obviously taking a lot of different twists and turns. And, I asked Gary to come on. He's been just going 1,000 miles an hour, but, I thought it would be important. We're going to talk about a couple of things tonight. First of all, we're going to, dedicate tonight's episode to the, urgent and heartbreaking case, obviously, of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie missing from her home in Tucson. She is the mother of the beloved NBC Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie. And obviously, this is day 4. And this case is taking a whole bunch of twists and turns. So the first thing I said the other day, right from the get-go, there were 3 things that I would be looking at. The first one, based on the victim risk continuum, that you don't leave that home yet. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. And now we see that the evidence response teams are back at the residence. They released it the other day, and now they're back there today. So there's a lot of activity going on there, and I'll show you some of that. The second thing, we talked about is, what are the types of motives that could be involved here based on the victim risk continuum? And this is where Gary's going to come in, really important tonight, because, there's a couple theories floating out there, right? Number one, 84-year-old women just don't walk out of their house. That just doesn't happen. And statistically, there are so many situations where it has never happened. They rarely keep statistics on it. It's not like children. And, Gary is like the statistic guru. And so I think it's going to be interesting to hear his, weigh in on this thing tonight. But also, then the third thing is it's going to be somebody still, in my opinion, based on experience and even what I'm seeing today and over the last couple of days. There, like I said the other day, there is a connection to this house somehow. And I said the other day, it could be a painter, it could be a pool guy, it could be, a friend of a friend, et cetera, et cetera. But somebody is connected to Miss Guthrie in some type of circle of influence somewhere, or it could be a secondary circle of influence. And what I also said was you cannot not yet clear out the family yet. You still have to focus and focus and focus. Now, the interesting thing today out at the house was the ICAC team, the Internet Crimes Against Children. That's not by accident. Those guys don't come out to a house unless there is some type of digital problem with inside a server or potential digital evidence. Now, that could be a secondary problem to the main problem, the disappearance of Mrs. Guthrie. Sometimes when you're investigating families, you ask for cell phones, you ask for digital devices, and of course the family goes here. Okay. Well, they're over at her sister's house, and her husband is, I believe, a fifth grade teacher. If there is some information on his servers and they found it, that could be a whole nother problem, hypothetically. That would be where you would pick up the phone and you would say, hey, we're going 150 miles an hour with Miss Guthrie. However, we came across all this other digital evidence. I need the ICAC team out here. And then they would respond. The ICAC team does not respond to the scene in a missing 84-year-old woman. They will come in to collect digital evidence of the lane that they run down. And what that means is if there are other things that maybe family members were using, maybe her computer, even at her house, that's why the ICAC team would be there. Now, where's that beeping coming from? Is that just me? Are you guys hearing that?
I heard it, but I thought it was on your side.
No, I don't know where it's coming from.
I was like, we're broadcasting from the road or something. I don't know what was going on. Like you were going around in a truck or something. I don't know what the heck that was.
I'm backing up from my seat here.
Right, exactly.
Okay. The reason I bring that up is they may have found some computer devices in there, and what the ICAC team is going to do is pull those items, and they're going to put it through a variety of different abilities. One of them is a system called Magnum Forensics. Magnum Forensics will be able to download this stuff, as well as a couple other things that I'm not going to talk about. Now, this is where maybe the family, there's been, I know Ashley Bamfield reported that a brother-in-law is possibly being looked at. The sheriff has made it clear there is no suspect at this time that they have identified and they're putting out into the environment. Now, the reason for that is obvious. They want to keep it close to the chest, and they want to be above board. And one of the reasons for that is potentially, if in fact one of these two letters, one that went to TMZ and one that went to the news station, I think it was Channel 13 or something like that in Tucson. And now you have Savannah Guthrie on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm going to show you her reading a note. Okay. And I said it the other night, the very first thing, if in fact this was an abduction situation, the very first thing that they're going to want to know is proof of life. And the reason for that is you have to establish that the victim, if she's been kidnapped, is still alive and that she's unharmed. They need to know that she's okay, and they need to hear and or see them in order to proceed with a situation that they're going to try to develop, if in fact this is legit on that side of the coin. So everything I'm going to say tonight is going to be very calculated and careful, so as not in any way, shape, or form to imply or to get in the middle of a thought process that if this turns into a negotiation situation behind the scenes, you have to understand that if in fact this is a transactional across the border problem, potentially. I saw the United States Customs and Border Patrol was back again today at Nancy's house. If in fact this is a transactional or a transnational conversation, there's no way I'm going to say or do or give away techniques and or things that could potentially be what's the word I'm looking for, Gary?
Misconstrued or
misconstrued.
But let me just say something very quickly that I think is important to say from the get-go, which is that if you look at available statistics on ransom demands, the average amount of time before you will hear from an abductor with a demand is about 24 to 48 hours. And most abduction situations are resolved in a week or less. It's a transactional matter. The person has no real interest in harming or eliminating the victim as much as collecting money. Sometimes there are abduction cases. There are cases in which just because of the cruelty of the offender or because something goes haywire or whatever, you can see the elimination. But if it's an authentic kidnap situation, it's usually very prompt. And I have to tell you, having looked through my own data and records and everything else, it is very, very unusual to transmit a ransom demand electronically to a media outlet. That, if those notes really are from an offender, it would tell you a lot more about the personality of the offender, the intelligence of the offender, and so forth, because it's bizarre. It's the kind of thing we see, in historical offenders that were ego-driven, where, the idea is to just get attention, to do something where it looks like it's about one thing, but it's bad. So it's interesting, if those are real, it is interesting to think about the mechanism, because let's face it, in 2026, using a ransom note is already risky. To do so by email is, dope level behavior, right? I mean, and to send it to a media outlet is very suggestive that it's not really about give me the money and let's quietly get this over with. So that's very strange. Wouldn't you agree? Sort of unprecedented a little bit.
No, it usually whenever there is a situation where, the person's going to say, well, I want X, Y, and Z, for them, it's a business deal, right? They're going to treat the ransom request as, kind of like revenue. The reason I want A, B, C, and D is because I'm holding the hostage here, and they believe at the other side of the coin there that this is going to be a revenue stream for them. Short, it's a short, pump of adrenaline, et cetera.
If
And
it's real, if it's real.
if it's real,
I think we agree that right now the jury is out on whether these are just attention-seeking people who sent these or people insinuating themselves into something. We've seen all this stuff.
Right. I'm a little concerned that Savannah is all over in social media now, reading a letter as if she's talking to somebody that has her mother. I can assure you that I haven't seen it yet, I've got it queued up here. Karen just sent it over to me. But if in fact, if it's drafted by the family and not the authorities,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be able to know. I'll be able to tell in a couple of seconds.
It's so funny, Chris, how similar our thought processes are sometimes. Because that was exactly what I was going to bring up. Was who wrote it? Because you can tell sometimes, because sometimes they're masterpieces of getting the offender to behave a certain way, and it's given to the family to say, read this, and this is the effect we suspect it'll have, versus coming up with it yourself. But I think it will be really interesting to hear it. But the thing is, how long has she been gone now? When was she taken? How long?
Going up.
Yeah. See, in a true ransom situation, you would have expected a note that was far more private, and that would have come between 1 and 2 days. By now, you'd already be resolving it, at least statistically speaking, generally speaking. So we're already in, okay, so people are saying day 4, still, that's long. Now, have you ever in your work dealt with a hostage situation like that?
That lasted 4 days?
Yeah.
No, 2 days was the most.
Right. And I don't want to say out loud the dark thoughts that come into my mind about when someone is missing 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. But you and I both know that every day that goes on that someone is missing, the likelihood increases of the worst outcome. Right. I mean, that's the thing. But I think it's very important not to, wouldn't you agree based on statistics? It's just that it's a grim thing to even go to in our minds. Right. But based on numbers, the time is not good. The amount of time that's been passing with an 84-year-old woman without her meds who was bleeding. Right. I mean, at least at the time. And that's the other thing, Chris, that I hope we're going to touch on is if you are abducting someone who is valuable because returning them is worth a lot of money, you are going to consider it enormously important to keep them alive and take anything that you need to keep them alive, like money, and not doing something to them that makes them bleed at 84 years old. So that has been whirling around in my head as one of those Columbo, it doesn't make sense things, right? That it sort of makes me think there was a different reason for the removal from the home. And see, so, and that is something that I think if I know you're also asking that question, right? So I could be wrong, but we're not friends for no reason, Chris.
No, and I think we'll break that down here in a couple of minutes. Now, I've not seen. We're going to cover a couple things tonight. And I'm going to stay on as long as we need to and do a Q&A as well, because I really, really, really uh,
Right.
believe that with all of the law enforcement assets over there tonight, I told Karen I wanted I almost went there today. I was that close, and Karen was like, "Well, you have an appointment." I was just on court TV tonight, so I couldn't
Wow, you
get
were?
out of that.
I
Yeah,
didn't see that.
I love Vinny. Vinny, that guy is awesome. Vinny Politan's awesome.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I had a commitment there, and so I couldn't get out there. But if it's still rocking, my grandson has got a piano recital on Saturday.
Oh,
So,
I
but
love a piano player.
right after that, man, I'm going to be on the ground. But I think there's going to be some things happening pretty rapidly here. And the reason I say that is because, based on the activity, going down here
Mm,
with the type of movement at that house, I saw that
yeah.
they have the evidence teams back out there. And we're also going to we can also talk about was the evidence, was the scene compromised? And, with all of the media, with everybody going up there with the blood on the porch, et cetera. Um, you know, you you can't keep going back. Remember, one of the things I pounded in, what they basically just did is gave the defense a door, and they opened it really wide when they put the tape back up and said, well, we missed some things, okay, well, the first thing the defense is going to do is argue, well, like what? And did you know that the media had cross contaminated everything at that scene? You know, because in those pictures there are some things that probably people haven't seen that I'm going to point out tonight, where it looked like if there was a struggle, okay, it's potentially, she fell and she was trying to get up because there's 90-degree droplets that are straight down. And it's probably not her head, because head wounds bleed, unreal. So let's start off with, let's listen to the letter being read.
This poor family, and keep them in our prayers too.
Right. And then Gary, let's go through the the psychological assessment in terms of, what we would typically think based on the victim risk continuum being all on the left side. Why we don't leave the house yet, and then why we believe, this idea in relationship to a victimology, who would be in that circle of influence into that residence. Now, and then we've got the secondary problem with the ICAC team showing up, which I just explained. That could be, an incidental situation because they found some other stuff during the search. Okay. And by the way, did you know the ICAC teams used little Jack Russells?
No, but I'm thrilled to hear it. I love them. They're one of my favorite breeds.
You know what they do? They put them in the HVAC systems in the vents.
Wow, brilliant.
Yeah, because suspects sometimes they hide their digital evidence in the vents, and they teach the dogs how to smell the floppy disk.
Fascinating. So they're doing the same thing with offenders that they used to do with rats,
Correct.
where they basically just
And
dig them out of the ground. Hence why they're called terriers, right? I mean, yeah.
they use sometimes they use jacks because they're so agile, and they go in after, critters under the ground, and they're just naturals. They get up in there and they push them in there. Could you see Buddy in there? That little meatloaf, going through all the vents, and they open the vent, they call them through the other side of the house, and they pull them out. It's pretty neat. Okay.
I love it. All right. Well, let's listen to this with this heartbreaking.
All right, let's listen here. I'm going to put it up. Stand by.
And maybe we should identify who everybody is on the screen.
Well, it looks like Savannah Guthrie and her siblings. I don't know who's who. It looks like a brother and sister. Here we go.
On behalf of our family, we want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved mom, Nancy. We feel them, and we continue to believe that she feels them too. Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. She's funny, spunky, and clever. She has grandchildren that adore her and crowd around her and cover her with kisses. She loves fun and adventure. She is a devoted friend. She is full of kindness and knowledge. Talk to her and you'll see.
The light is missing from our lives. Nancy is our mother. We are her children. She is our beacon. She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances. She chooses joy day after day, despite having already passed through great trials of pain and grief. We are always going to be merely human, just normal human people who need our mom. Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you.
Our mom is our heart and our home. She is 84 years old. Her health, her heart is fragile. She lives in constant pain. She is without any medicine. She needs it to survive. She needs it not to suffer. We too have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. On behalf of our family, we want to.
Okay, so that's it. So there's a couple things from, for some reason I keep getting a bounce, but there's a couple things going on here. One of the things is they're testing the water for empathy.
I think that too, with the humanizing her. If you talk to her, you'll see that, this is who she is. This is the kind of person she is. There's a little bit of that. Like, if we make her a human, maybe it'd be harder for you to hurt her.
Right.
That kind of thing. Right.
And the reason for that is obviously to de-escalate. And because empathy doesn't mean that there's going to be an agreement. It just means that they can open up a dialogue. And so the first part of that is they're trying to lay a foundation for, does the person who may have her based on the ransom letter concept, do they have it within inside of themselves to have feelings? Okay. The second piece of that, like I said, even before the show started, or when the show started, was proof of life. In today's world with AI, with a whole bunch of other stuff, they need to know for a fact that mom's still alive.
Right.
Okay?
Well,
So-
you remember the serial killer Israel Keys, when he took Koenig, the last victim, he had already eliminated her. He killed her after assaulting her, and figured he might as well collect a ransom while he was at it. But he had to prove that she was alive, so he made her look alive for photographs. In other words, if a person is sadistic and psychopathic enough, especially with the technology we have today, proof of life proof is sometimes questionable, because
Right.
people get very, very creative. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's where you're going with the AI point, is just that you don't even know anymore. I mean, we're at the point now where they can take an actor who died 20, 30 years ago and put them in a movie convincingly. And so that is disturbing to me. I mean, how do you prove life in 2026?
Well, yeah, and that's what they're trying to establish with this conversation based on the letter that was just read. And so, which leads me, let's talk about this for a moment.
Right. And you said they're 90-degree flex, right?
Yes, all of these droplets here
Mm-hmm.
are what we would call, 90-degree angles, except for this one, obviously. But this one here, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So think of it this way. And you can already tell that this was disturbed, which could lead to one or two things. Either the suspect was behind her potentially, if in fact this is hers, because you'll see this piece of green here? It came from this plant source here up against the door. I got another photo of that. But notice the green is on top of the blood. So that means it came after the blood was already in place. So it's right on top of this blood droplet there. So typically either the victim and or the suspect, if there's more than one, they're kicking, they're moving things with their feet. And that's why, let me show you this picture. If you see this, let me see if I can zoom in on this thing. You see this leafy substance here, back here? There's a question that I have is, where did this leafy subject or item come from? Was it from the field? Did the suspect bring this in? They bring it to the porch? Because when we look at that picture now, again, if we go back to that picture, let me go back to the other one.
Where was the forced entry?
Well, they're saying it was the back door, potentially.
So then is this
I
the
don't
back
think
door
we
or the
know
front?
for sure.
But
Go
is
ahead.
this the front or the back door?
This is the front door. But
So
see
that
this?
these are
See
things
this?
that would be carried out, not in.
Well, see this blood here?
Right.
See how this leaf is over the top of that 90-degree blood?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this tells us the blood was there first.
Oh.
So, and this right here, to me, this is what they would call a low impact, maybe medium velocity. So if she's coming out of the house and fell, this could be her trying to get back up, which is these little droplets like this. The blood is moving this way. So it's coming out of the house. It's not going into the house. Okay. Yeah. This evidence is clear that the blood is coming away from the house, not to the house.
Right.
Okay.
Consistent with this being what looks like, if this is the front door and the invasion was through a back door, then it's consistent with the idea that this is somebody leaving the home and things are being left behind them as they're exiting.
Exactly. And that's why this is important to understand is, did this happen from people going up on the porch? Did it happen by the suspect? We're not going to know that until, and also you see this reflection here in the window. There's a reflection. That's an Amazon package.
Oh.
That's on the porch to the right as you step onto the porch. Okay. And that's a reflection in the window. When you look at some of the news videos, you'll see that there's an Amazon package on the porch.
Is that a little like a window, like a long window next to the door through which a person could see what you're doing while being pretty concealed?
Yes. And they could also a lot of times, see this steel door like this, right? Well, with these types of doors, these kind of windows alongside of them
Right.
are, for my friends and families, these are never good because a suspect can just, I've had many cases, burglars break these windows and just reach in and open the door and they're in the house.
Mm.
So now this is where the Nest camera allegedly was positioned there. Okay. And if you go into the house, allegedly there's another camera that I think it was either Brian Enton or Ashley Banfield reported that the authorities had reported those items were destroyed. So let's talk about what's going on right now. And I want to show this tab from the news.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. We begin tonight with breaking news in Arizona. You are looking at a live shot at Nancy Guthrie's home where there has all of a sudden been a major police presence. Police are roping off the house with crime scene tape, and dogs, search dogs, and search teams are all on the grounds. This is all happening as the search goes on for the 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie is now in its fourth day with still no sign of her, and wild speculation filling the information vacuum. The Pima County Sheriff's Department is shooting down reports that a family member is a prime suspect in the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. In a statement today, it said investigators have not identified a suspect or person of interest. The office added that detectives are working closely with the family and noted that, quote, the sharing of unverified accusations or false information is irresponsible and does not assist the investigation. Now, what we do know about Nancy Guthrie is concerning. The sheriff says she doesn't have dementia, so she couldn't just wander off and wouldn't do that. On top of that, Nancy has trouble walking even 50 yards on her own. So someone else likely took her out of the house.
And there's forced entry into the house, Chris, which, doesn't happen when somebody wanders out.
Right. And
because wandering happens. Absolutely. That happens, for example, there were a lot of cases involving autistic children or developmentally disabled children.
yeah, but not in this case.
Right. No, not in this case, because there was forced entry into the home.
Yes. And she's
and she couldn't ambulate like that. Yeah.
Hang on for a minute. I want to show you one other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody can just give me 30 seconds here.
Do you know where this is, by the way, Chris? Like in Tucson? Like, are these well known? Like what you're seeing here, this church and do you know exactly where this is?
I know the area. Yes, most definitely. Now, here's something that I'm going to show that I think needs to be paid attention to.
Okay.
All right. So this was September. Pull this down. I'm going to share this link. Everybody check this out. The Pima County Sheriff's Department is investigating a burglary that happened a couple weekends ago in the Catalina foothills area. Check this out. This is the same neighborhood. Watch. One, two, three suspects. Whoops, wait a minute. I'm not even showing you guys. What am I doing? Let me back up. Sorry about that. So here we go. So they got into the house, forced entry, and they had a fourth person who disguised herself as an Amazon delivery person.
I have a package that needs a signature.
Okay, when was this? Now, one of the things that you always have to be akamai about for law enforcement, this happened September 22nd, 2025. So within a couple of months. These are the kind of things you look for as an investigator that says, hey, wait a minute, are there any other incidences that had occurred in and around, 5 or 6 months before the incident occurred? That is problematic. I'm not saying it's connected. It's kind of like the underwear incident in the Koberger case. When you have in the exact same neighborhood 4 people involved in what we would call a hot prowl, or somebody potentially in the house, and they're breaking in, it's going to be interesting. It's definitely not related. Okay, well, we don't know that yet, but I appreciate your comment. We don't know. And all I'm saying is,
You're doing what any good cop would do. You look for clues. This could be a clue. That's all. It's
Right.
worth considering. That's all.
yeah,
You're not assuming. You're exploring. You're thinking about. You're showing your thought process. I think it's interesting.
right. I mean, when I stood in the backyard of Brian Koberger, before they caught him, I said, this guy knows this neighborhood. And that's all I'm saying in this particular situation. I'm still not, I haven't left the house yet, even in my own mind. Okay. So let's talk about, first of all, the type of personality, Gary, who abuses the elderly.
Well, okay. This is opens up a whole wider part of the conversation. First of all, statistics are very lacking, as you mentioned earlier, on certain offenses, especially against people that are elderly. Now, the word elderly, varies according to who. I'm elderly to my nephew, for example. But elderly in the way that it's meant in the statistics. I mean, you're talking, somebody who was 75 or older, or 80, so. And the interesting thing is, Dr. Burgess and I at Boston College, we are sort of looking actually at crimes against elders, most recently crimes against Native American elders. And it was quite illuminating in terms of that there is this sort of special pocket of what happens to you in terms of crime when you are older like that. Now, I will tell you that there is generally an assumption that when you're dealing with a victim who is in her 80s, that one of the things you would normally take off the table, you say it's very improbable that there's a sexual element or whatever. But actually, if you do a deep dive into the literature, you'll see that there is actually an overrepresentation in people of that age in terms of being assaulted in that way, but it tends to be by people who are associated with them in life and in their own home or their own circle, and there tends to be a very violent, over aggressive quality to it, where there can be very real physical harm to the person or even death. There can be instances of that with serial offenders, particularly ones using drugs like Richard Ramirez, who have a randomness to the victimology. There can be, whoever happens to be in the home I invade. So one thing that whenever you're thinking about the whole spectrum of possibilities, you have to think about is that you invade a home, you don't rob anything. One of the things you think about is that that's your purpose, right? It's improbable, but we're talking about all the different possibilities. So that's one. The wandering away and looking like you've been abducted possibility, I think, is ruled out by the fact that, first of all, she couldn't really ambulate. Secondly, she wasn't known to have a condition that would have caused it. And the third is there was forced entry to the house. So I think that one sort of goes over here. Okay. Then you start thinking about the financial and the pragmatic reason why somebody might take a person. And almost always it's because you are going to have a ransom situation, and that's going to happen pretty quickly, as we said, which did not happen quickly. And it normally would be a rather private affair. You wouldn't be sending it to the media, whatever, certainly not by email. So then you start thinking about attention. Do you select someone associated with a prominent person and send notes to a media outlet because you're an egotist? Or, this is really ultimately about that. That's an interesting question too. I'm still considering the jury out on whether these notes are even real. And then there's another possibility, which is really quite interesting to me. Now, Chris, that one of the things that I've contributed to the literature is this term elimination murder. And what I mean by that is when there is in the mind of an offender a very pragmatic, not so necessarily personal, but pragmatic reason why somebody has to be eliminated. They know something about you, for example, that you're doing wrong. They are an impediment to a windfall. They're preventing you, a la, Susan Smith, from having a romance, whatever. And you eliminate the person. And the interesting thing about those cases is that in my research, almost invariably, you make it look like a person has invaded the home. A total stranger has invaded the home, and you do a lousy job of it because you're not a professional criminal. So that's interesting. That's in the back of my mind. Is this somebody who had some other reason to want to do something to this poor woman and is either throwing red herrings or taking advantage of red herrings that happen to be arising because other people are sending in these weird messages? But this is what's bothering me. And I think, as I said earlier, I know that you and I are going to arrive at the same question. If you are kidnapping a person for financial reasons, they have to stay alive. You take their meds. You make sure they're not injured. Now, I think we would agree that there has to be a vehicle in play. I think that there has to be a vehicle that you put.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to show one other picture. Okay. And don't lose your train of thought, Gary, because you're on a roll.
Right. But these are all the possibilities, not saying any of them are true, just laying out all the buckets into which one's
doing our thing.
Yes.
And okay. So this was an early picture at the crime scene. Look at the upper right-hand corner by the garage. You see this? Do you see those tracks right there? Can everybody see that?
Yes, I'm sure the FBI has already identified the vehicle that made them.
Okay, but that's going to be my question because
Mhm.
later on this afternoon, they were in the garage. And I want to pull this up, make it a little bit bigger so that everybody can take a look at these. And we're just going to ask the questions. That's what we do here on TIR. We just ask questions. You know, why are these there? They look like they're, you know, they originated here. They start here, and then they move down and pull out of the driveway. Let me back this up. See that?
Mhm.
See? And there's another car up here. I can't see it in this particular. I think this is the coppers, but you can see the shadow of the car here. And there are better pictures of this, but I caught that right away the other day, and I was like, well, that's interesting, and I just made a note of it.
Right. What somebody in the audience said, could they be wheelchair tracks?
Um,
I don't think so. They look like vehicle tracks to me. They're
yeah, I
long.
think that's a great question, but I think they're too wide. Now, here's an interesting concept too. Are they drag marks? Somebody's asking. I don't know.
They look too
Yeah.
symmetrical and kind of vehicle-like.
Yeah, and if she's coming out of the front of the house, but you see right here as well, this could be problematic as well.
Yeah. This is just so scary, isn't it?
Do you see this
Mhm.
discoloration? I want to know what this is.
Oh, sure.
You can see it on the step, the patio, because if they're moving her
Right.
from the front door out and she had potentially collapsed, I believe that if this is her blood at the front, if they tested this, I do not believe this is from the suspect. I think
Why?
I think it's probably Nancy.
But Chris, if
Mhm.
you broke in through a back door and you had a victim alive or deceased, why wouldn't you go through the back door? Why take the risk of going through the front door?
Well, there's probably a vehicle involved.
That's what I'm wondering.
Right. And that's why those
You
over,
see?
over by the
Right. But this is the point. If you're planning to do a certain thing when you go in, why don't you park the car back there? If
well,
you're
there's-
going to abduct a person, you know you're going to need the car in a safer place, right? Why wouldn't you drive it around to the back door?
well,
It
we've
makes
got
me
these
think
tracks.
that something-
We've got these tire tracks too,
But
right?
you see where my
Mhm.
thought's going is that it makes me think that something happened that wasn't expected. And then you're taking the person out of the house. Because if I were going to break into a house to kidnap a person, that was my plan, I'd have the car around the back where I was sneaking in to
Well,
take them out with a lower risk.
but you may have you may have evidence of that. This here and
That's what I want to know.
this may be evidence that I don't know how old these tracks are. I'm just going by what was these.
But you see, my thought process is that an intelligent person who's going in there with that plan, and we have to imagine ourselves into the intellect level. We don't know what it is, right? I mean, of a person. But if you or I were to do something like that, this awful thing, wouldn't it occur to you to have the vehicle in a less risky place to remove the individual alive or deceased if you went in with that kind of plan?
Well, yeah. I mean, Gary, there's 1,000 variances, right?
That's the problem. But I'm just thinking out loud. It's an interesting thing to think about if there's a vehicle in play, and I imagine there is. You know, I've noticed more and more recently that cars are what is getting people damned. It's what they leave in the vehicle.
Well, yeah. Don't get me started on that one. I love you.
I know
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Koberger case, right?
Yeah. And so in this situation, if they're taking her out through the front, hypothetically,
Right. Hypothetically.
there is a vehicle. There's got to be a vehicle involved. Her car keys are there. Her purse is there. Her medications are there. All indications
Right.
that she was taken out of that house, forcefully against her will. I think one of the, like I mentioned the other day, for me, the primary question is going to be, what does the bedroom tell us? we know what the interior of the house is going to tell us. The interior of the house is going to tell us she probably fought back, but it all depends. Did she know the perpetrator? Did she recognize him or her? Or is this just the statistics don't line up with this is a total stranger abduction. This is a situation that somebody
At
has.
least chance to cross her at some point. There's some knowledge of her between the offender and is what you're saying. This wasn't a random home invasion.
I love this one. Golf carts are common vehicles in places like that. That's a good one. Yep, I agree with you. That is also another possibility. But then again, if you take her out, she's not far.
Right, but Chris, what I'm getting at is when it comes to the statistics, even on the most awful of possibilities, the sexual possibility,
Right.
I think is improbable, but unfortunately we can never take anything off the table with these things. Even in that situation with the statistics on people of this age, you generally know the person. It's not like it is in the younger population where you break into a house and randomly assault. It's less likely. And so in other words, in every possibility that was laid out, with the exception, of course, of the person just wandering off, which I think is off the table because of the things we mentioned, in each of them, it's more likely you know the person statistically. In other words, if we were thinking this through just based on stats, every bucket you go into suggests some pre-knowledge of the victim. And so I think if you had to make a profile based on statistics, it leans in the direction of these two people at some point in time were in the same circle someplace, right?
100%, in my opinion.
Right. So that's important. And then, the other thing is this that I think we have to say is this is not a professional job. Whoever did this is their first rodeo with this. They're not good at it, right? Do you think they are?
I'm not going to say that. I think there's many problems.
Right.
If the ransom note is a red herring, right? Trying to part of a staging concept, right?
That's different. That's different.
Right. And we're going to get into that too, because I think the audience will find that interesting, especially this is a really good combination, guys and gals, because I'm a hostage negotiator. He's a forensic psychologist. And, I'm a homicide guy, but at the same time, we would both be sitting in the trailer talking to the suspect. Right. I would be talking and he would be writing notes.
It sounds like a TV show, Chris, the way you made it out. They'd have us played by, I don't know who.
Well,
but in all seriousness, it's a very, very grim and serious conversation. But a moment of levity because it's so depressing.
Right.
But so proceed.
Okay, so the concept here is, I think you and I are both in agreement that everything is still, again, we're focused at that house still. And then the suspect at some point has come into the environment, i.e. the world of Nancy Guthrie. Somewhere, somehow, it could be a friend, could be a neighbor, could be a family member, could be a friend of a friend of a neighbor.
Although there's a caveat with that, which is that when someone is a public figure, sometimes the people that are around them vicariously become public figures, right?
My old partners. Yeah, hamburger, get out of here.
But that's so funny. But the thing is, Chris, that can happen. So, like, for example, I know people who are public figures, and I say to them, on your social media, stop posting photos of your kids. Stop posting photos of you and your wife out with the kids. Don't do that. You're giving people data. Yeah. You're making them public figures. Keep that private. So I think that it is interesting to think about how exposed the people are around a prominent person, and then sometimes the connection point becomes murky because it's simply that someone has become. It can sometimes be that somebody's just become focused on a celebrity. And then because you're connected to them, that is the funny thing is, Chris, that in some strange ways there are shades to the John Bonet story in this case, which you and I can talk about hours, but there are shades of it, but we'll get to that another time.
So let's talk about the three let's just talk about 2 of 3 possibilities.
Right. And let me be clear. When I say shades of it, I mean where if you're thinking about an intruder, you have to ask the question of what is the circle in which somebody could have come across this person and it involves a person who's been in the public eye. In that case, the direct victim was the person in the public eye. But here, it's like a step removed. But it's interesting to think about that someone can feel a personal relationship with a person and want to parasitically draw attention from victimizing them. So you have to always think about that too. But that would be a very different type of offender.
So let's talk about that guy, because Savannah's a very high profile celebrity.
Right. That's very important in this victimology, I think.
Okay, so let's talk about that personality that would, vicariously live and believe certain things about her, and this is a way to, kind of like Jodie Foster, right?
Right.
Okay.
But whether you mean where someone became obsessed with her and
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that stalker slash individual slash personality that lives in this fantasy. Well, remember who killed John Lennon? What was his name?
Mark
I
David
forget.
Chapman.
Yeah. So Chapman was just enamored. Could this be a scenario where somebody was enamored with the daughter and mom is kind of the connection? What do you
It is plausible. I mean, right now the jury is out on every possibility. I think, Chris, that this is a really good example of where it's useful to look at the scale that Michael Stone and I present in The New Evil. Okay. The version of it of the details that are in there, although Michael has it in The Anatomy of Evil, it's expanded to include a lot of things in the New Evil. And the reason it's valuable is it basically says when you're looking at a case and you're thinking about motive and what went on or whatever, that's very important. But what you would think about in the psychology of the offender is different depending upon the person's particular personality, right? So moving along the spectrum, what you're talking about is a narcissistic motivation, but we can also see more psychopathic motivations, more sadistic motivations, psychotic motivations, pragmatic motivations, or whatever. So I think we have to walk through them.
Okay.
But just asking the question of where you have an abduction where a person is narcissistically motivated. A good example of that, for example, is the case of Gary Christ, who was a physician who abducted Barbara Jane Mackle, who was a friend of the Nixon family, actually the daughter of the friend of the Nixon family. And she was abducted from a hotel room where her mother was taking care of her as she recovered from an illness. And in that case, the arrogance and the narcissism of this offender was so intense that it wasn't enough for him to get away with this and control everybody and try to get money. So for his amusement, he did something that was totally unnecessary to this financial crime, which was that he buried the victim alive in a box in which she survived. He designed an underground hiding place for her with an air tube so that she could be hidden there, whatever. And that was his way of expressing the "I'm smarter than you" narcissistic need. You can see in some narcissistically motivated offenders that they're more interested in the attention than they are in the money. There is that parasitic quality of wanting to attach yourself to the fame of the offender, like we've talked about in some assassin personalities. So it is interesting to think about that as a possible part of this, because you have victimized the celebrity person. So that's by harming potentially their family member, scaring them, being major news, etc. If the ransom is real, you send it to a news. I mean, what is this? The Zodiac killer? That kind of thing of sending it to a news agency instead of directly to private people. So that's one possibility.
Right, but we're not doing that. I think for clarity for the audience, we're not saying.
Oh, we have no idea. We're just talking about possibilities.
The letter. I mean, it was framed. The statement that the family gave, it's framed in two principles of, create that empathy, and we need proof of life. So those are FBI, negotiated principles. So,
and also, I felt that there was hidden in that.
Yep.
This toying with the psychology of an arrogant person, where you're basically saying, you're giving this kind of feeling of the power is in your hands. You could talk to her, and then reach out, let us know she's, but because it's like a way of sort of making a person with a pathetic need to demonstrate domination and power control feel that you're putting the power in their hands to show mercy, right? You can pardon this individual, you can give them life, like you're basically telling them, giving them a godlike power over a person. So I think that is one possibility, that this is ultimately about somebody who is narcissistically motivated. Then the next thing, and by the way, in some cases where there's preoccupation with a celebrity, like with Mark David Chapman, there's also a question of becoming psychotically fixated on a person, right? You mentioned the Jodie Foster case, for example, where you can have a delusional idea that you have a special relationship with a person. So there is that. Then you start moving into the more psychopathic. And in the psychopathic kind of a world, there can be two possibilities. One is you can just simply have a pragmatic aim. I want money. I don't care this is a human being. I'm going to do what I need to do. You can use a person like that, and you just couldn't give a flying leap, right? You could also be a person who knows a person, has a personal issue with them, or you're trying to get away with something and they're simply in the way, and you will, in a sort of sociopathic way, make it look like something else, stage it, lie, manipulate, whatever you've got to do to get away with it. But that kind of person, the people around you have probably picked up that you're a schemer, or you probably have a history like that. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be clues that there's something up with your personality. You could also, in that psychopathic range, have sexual motivations, where you're going to probably repetitively assault people like that. There are a lot of reasons people commit SA, but a person who repetitively does it, where you target a person sleeping at night in this way, probably there's going to be that kind of personality stuff going on. And then you could have a sadistic motivation, right? You could be someone who's holding this woman and doing cruel things to her, that you can be amused by the idea that everybody is horrified. You could care less about the humanity. So there's all these different possibilities. But when it comes to statistics, the idea of a sexual motivation against somebody of this age, the idea of being somebody who's doing it for this attention reason, these things, you start getting into the rare. The most common is a person with a personality that's a little sideways, that has come into a reason to either want someone out of the way or to get something from them, and has done this half-baked kind of thing to try to get away with something. And those people tend to be someone who has either chanced across you or has known you, and that is interesting. It's also interesting, Chris, that this is a highly vulnerable victim. She cannot ambulate well. She's 84 years old. Why go in the middle of the night and get her when she's probably sleeping? I mean, think about that. You understand? It's not like Koberger going in the middle of the night for different reasons, right? So what does that tell you? Is somebody who was just thinking, I don't want to be seen going in the house, and that's the reason? Or is it that you think the person may know you? I mean, in other words, what is the reason do you suspect, or what does it make you think about that somebody would go so late at night? And also, if you know somebody personally, really know them personally, you could even ring the bell and use a ruse and they'll let you in. If there's a kind, oh, come on in. Is everything okay? Yeah, I'm having some problems. I want to talk to you, whatever. So that's interesting too. I suspect, as I bet you do, that what this is a situation where these two people at one point, at least at one point, were in the same circle.
Yes.
Okay. And this person, whoever this person is that's in this circle with this person, do you think that they knew a great deal about this victim and this neighborhood and everything else?
Yeah. I mean, I would think, based on what we know, right, and what you and I have been studying for years,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not going to surprise, I don't think, either one of us, just like, we said on the, a couple other things. But
Right.
I'm here's one of the really interesting dynamics that came up today is the internet crimes against children.
Oh, yes. I heard that too.
Yeah, Brian Enton reported that he said it was ICAC. That means ICAC is what it's called. Okay.
Right, I know.
The ICAC team, the fact that they went to her sister's house, okay, did they go also to the mother's house, Nancy's house? And because a lot of times if offenders are into that stuff, they may also use somebody else's computer to cover their tracks.
Right. It's actually in elimination murders that I've studied when I came up with that term. One of the prime reasons for it is someone knows too much about something.
And that was where I was going here. And you read my mind. You were ahead of me again. But so hypothetically, right, let's say this is a situation where she finds it.
Right. And this is, let's be clear, this is total.
This is total
We're just
speculation, thought process.
not talk about any particular person.
We're thinking out loud. We're just
Right.
thinking out loud.
Right.
Okay. And where's that going? I mean, where's that going? You don't get the ICAC team guys to come out because they need a forensic analysis. No, all of those items, the way that goes down is they seize all of those items and then they push it to the lab. And from there, they process all of the information. And from there, they, get all those files and they work it backwards.
Right.
Okay? And they work it backwards. And, I'm just reading your chat here. Betty Babel. Okay, great. Just for the record, I trained detectives. So I think don't underestimate an old guy.
I want to know how old they think I am.
Well, you're really old. You're really old. And so where I was going with this before you sent me that chat text, this idea was they got this stuff back at the lab. They downloaded it all and went, okay, wait a minute. What's going on here? Now, this could be one of two things. This could be a secondary situation that's just off, like we talked about earlier, offshoot.
Unrelated, found by accident or not even found at all. Who knows?
And, if there's other connections to children, et cetera, employment or anything like that, the ICAC team's going to connect those dots. I appreciate you saying that. Gary's a lot older than me, ATS News. He is.
Chris.
Thank you for your kindness. But so that's where I think the ICAC
formaldehyde on me, Chris. Can't you tell?
Okay, but now the case agent, the FBI, the sheriff, everybody is now going to be going, oh, wait a minute. What? You found what? Yeah. Okay. All right. Does that have any correlation to what we're investigating with Mom Disappeared? And then your theory, Gary, now becomes even a possibility. And so, and what we would do for the audience, by the way, we would have, these sheets of paper on the wall. And you write on the wall all of your crazy theories, your concept, the ideas, okay? And so that they're all up there and everybody in this investigation, we used to call it the war room, can walk into the war room and everybody would go, okay, hey, I got more about this one. Okay, how does it correlate to this one?
Right.
So when we're just used to talking out loud here and throwing stuff on the wall, literally on the wall. Only it's we write it on the
red
wall.
Yarn, like in the TV shows. And also, Chris, based on what I'm reading in the chat, there's something very important we have to clarify. What we're talking about are all the different buckets of where offenders tend to fall who do these things for personal cause. But there are also abduction cases that are group enterprise, as Anne and John Douglas and so forth would call it in the crime classification manual. So that it is also, you can also see cases where a gang or a group of people have done something for a different reason. In other words, we're talking about this as if it's a foregone conclusion,
Right.
that there's somebody with a personal motivation. You could never take off the table that other stuff too. So I think it is fair to make that distinction, right? Because that's another path you could go down. I think it's less probable. I'm just saying that we have no idea what's going on here. We're laying out different buckets of what we see, and which are the most likely and the least likely, but that means nothing, because let's face it, some pretty strange stuff is happening in the world of true crime these days, and you never put anything past an offender anymore.
Yeah. And so let me explain the ICAC teams in that area. Okay. Yes, they are so they're cross sworn.
Yeah.
And what happens is every agency gives, somebody to the ICAC team. It's kind of like a fugitive apprehension team. Okay. Or a HIDA team. A HIDA team deals with drugs. ICAC deals with kids and, the really bad stuff online.
The really disgusting stuff.
Right. And
There's
so
a job you wouldn't want to have, Chris. Could you imagine trying to sleep at night doing that work? I mean, from your own work,
yeah, no, those guys are a different breed. And long story short, they're cross sworn. Okay. So they're state officers, but when they go to this task force, an ICAC task force, they are cross sworn. So they have both federal and state power. Okay. And that's all they do. In that area, Phoenix, Tucson, Mesa, all the agencies plug in personnel to that, and it's funded by the federal government. So what they do, the federal government pays for all the salaries of the task force members. I am really curious as to why they are in this play.
it's odd.
Something's going on in that house where they showed up. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's connected yet, but let's keep an eye on that, guys. Okay. Let's keep an eye on that, because that's going to be somewhere connected to this.
It is odd.
IACP is International Chiefs of Police. That they're not connected to this. You have the wrong acronym. Okay.
Now, Chris, can I ask you something that's puzzling me based on news reports? I want to understand. What are labs looking at right now?
Well, there's two things that they're doing. They're doing a geofencing with probably a technology called Gladiator, and what they're doing is they're geofencing any communication devices that came into that area around the time that they believe Mrs. Guthrie disappeared. So anywhere from probably the time she got dropped off to the time the family got there and called 911. And they're gonna scrutinize every device that came within that area. And they can do that. Remember, they put Alex Cox at the fire pit in the backyard of Chad Daybell's house. So, let's think about that for sure, right? Let's think about that. Okay. That's the first thing they're doing right now. This is a digital press, full court press. Now, so I see somebody saying that Kash Patel is on his way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that tells me they're on to something deep here. Because that you don't get on the phone, call FBI headquarters in DC and say, let the director know we don't have anything, but get in a plane and come on out. that tells us that if in fact that's true, okay, that means they have movement somewhere. One of the things that was really interesting, again, the Customs and Border Patrol was back with their canines today. Here's two questions that I have. Are they cadaver trained, or are they just tracking trained, or are they both? If they're cadaver trained, they also had some devices out which were, anomalies. They were looking for anomalies through helicopters. Brian Enton said there was one of the guys leaning out with this device. Well, what they're doing is they're looking for soil anomalies, as if maybe something digging.
Right.
So if anybody out there sees the authorities move into a specific area, okay, then let us know in the chat right away. Okay. Is it possibly drug related? I want to answer this question for Suzanne. Susan. Typically these guys, and we have to talk about risk level of offenders.
Right.
An offender wouldn't, necessarily kidnap an 84-year-old woman, take her out of the house, not give her life support, because remember the first question that comes in during that letter, the first thing they call it tactical empathy. There's an actual terminology for it. Okay. And it's the foundation of everything. It's not sympathy. You want to create a deliberate conversation around understanding and articulate the other person's feelings and a perspective that they may have as to why they even went into the house with this 84-year-old woman. So one of the first things I would say, if let's say they had a negotiation, and by the way, we don't even know if this is a kidnapping scenario, that there's not a negotiation going on behind the scenes. A lot of these things can be resolved, believe it or not, behind the scenes. Okay. But why it works is because it disarms the hostility. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make people feel heard, and you're opening them up to being influenced. Now, I'm not going to give away a lot of the secrets in HNT, but this is why the letter said the first thing we need is to see a proof of life. Okay. And that's the priority here in this concept where she just got on, and put that information out there. They need to know. And also what that does is it buys time. More time. But 48, 4 days into this is a long time.
Well, Chris, one thing that I think is interesting is, remember we said that we've been mostly focusing on the personal cause thing. And so a drug thing, more often when you talk about a conspiracy of people, whatever, you start going into the group enterprise. But those are rarer, but they do happen. Now, one thing I think is interesting is that while we were sitting here, I noticed a report in the Daily Mail that's intriguing. And it says that in the county there, I'm not sure if it's pronounced Pima or Pima. How do you pronounce it?
Pima.
Pima, right? Okay. So the Pima County Sheriff's Department told TMZ that Guthrie's elderly neighbor noticed a suspicious person at his Arizona home in early January, less than 10 minutes away from Nancy's house. The lurker fled the scene after triggering a motion sensor, which caused floodlights to switch on, although no one was able to get a good look at the person's face. The sheriff's department said the tip was sent to the unit investigating Nancy's case for possible leads. So that's interesting, because if you were thinking of someone who simply was looking for an elderly victim, if you were going to try to connect those, this is a male victim. Starts moving away from a sexual motivation, probably starts moving a little bit more towards maybe the idea is the vulnerability of an older person, whatever. But if it's random, how do you know if they have family members to send a ransom note to? How do you know is it just breaking in to, exploit them? I don't know if the two things are connected. It's intriguing, though, that they're so close and that this was only recently. So that's just another one of these little things to dog ear that may be insignificant. Maybe it's a higher risk neighborhood than it seems.
Well, I don't know. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is, excuse me, I think the suspect's going to know that neighborhood. Again, I'm going to go just like I said in Koberger on this one.
I think so too.
Whoever this perpetrator is, especially if they have a car, you just don't randomly go, oh, okay, there's got to be an 84-year-old woman in this house at 2:00 in the morning. Okay. And they just, arbitrarily drive through the neighborhood or walk, and run into something. Right.
Right.
That's usually a no-brainer. Okay. And so again, we go back to, okay, well, who fits into that bucket?
Right. And wait, are you implying that the person seemed comfortable in the neighborhood, or maybe even comfortable in the house?
Well, they feel comfortable kicking in a back door at an 84-year-old residence.
So you're talking like from the risk perspective also.
Right. And that's why I played that Facebook
right.
video.
So from a risk perspective, because I think the audience would be interested to understand why we care about considering the risk level. Because I think it's very important. Yeah, right. So what do you think about that? I mean, that's all you to talk about that. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I've been thinking about it, about what the risks that were incurred in this story. And there was some effort to decrease risk, and that in some ways, in other ways, not. So what do you think?
Well, so there's two risk levels here. One is the victim risk, and that's why we run them through the victim risk continuum. And the lower the victim risk level, to the associated crime, the higher probability that there was a pre-association between the victim and the offender. So everything that goes to the left, environment, situation, circumstance, low, medium, high, that means there had to be some type of, statistically, there's always an anomaly, right? There's always a one-off somewhere in, crime, no matter what.
And we take advantage of the fact that offenders who are crafting something don't necessarily know that.
Right, exactly.
So like people who use cover stories often don't realize how stupid the cover story is.
Right. And so give a real world scenario for an example. 84-year-old woman what's the environment? She's in her house. What's the situation? She's sound asleep. What's the circumstance? She disappears. Is that low, medium, or high risk? All of that is on the low end. All those activities that she did and the environment, situation, circumstance was low risk. Now, let's take, whoever at a truck stop in downtown Tucson at 2:00 in the morning, and she's turning tricks. Okay. What's the environment? Well, she's at her truck stop. What's the situation? Okay. Well, she's trying to get some, customers. What's the circumstance? She got a customer. Is that a low, medium, or high risk event? Okay. If it's a high risk event, okay, then the higher the victim's risk level is to the associated crime, i.e., she's disappeared and she's dead, the higher the probability the offender is a stranger to that victim. So all of those things fit into this thing. Now, we talk now about the offender level. The fact that the offender risk exposure to identification and apprehension is raised, okay, suggests things in the suspect's personality, such as a lack of concern and a lack of sophistication.
Right. Yes. Especially if they sent that ransom note. If that's real, that's pretty dopey.
Yeah. Right. That shows a lack of sophistication, right, Gary? Right. Okay. If they're like, hey, by the way, and I want a bag of potato chips with that, via email. Remember, it was Dennis Rader that said, can I get caught? He asked the question, can I get caught if I send information on a floppy disk? That was a communication with the Wichita Police Department. So
yes.
And they told him, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Remember that letter. And by the way, the other thing that really bothered me, if these were legit letters, okay, to TMZ, I just love it when they're holding the letters like this and reading from them, okay, and putting all their DNA and their fingerprints on the letter they just got from a potential abductor, if that's a lane the investigation's going to go down. Okay, if it's not, next time, guys, if you get something, don't touch it. Call the cops. Let them put it in a piece of plastic. Take all your pictures. Do whatever you want. Because it was like the third or fourth letter the news figured out in BTK that they shouldn't be touching the letters. Okay. Same principle. It still applies. Okay. The lower the risk, okay, about an offender, consideration has to be given to increase criminal sophistication. So the more the suspect lowers their risk, then there is a higher probability of criminal sophistication, because there you start seeing things like pre-planning, premeditation, thought processes where they're making decisions about how much time they're going to spend in a house, where they're going to put, what's the point of entry, the point of exit. When they get into the house, what do they want to do and why do they want to do it? They have already thought through it. Burglars do this like secondary nature. Okay. And by the way, they talk about this stuff in prison settings as well. Okay. They think through this stuff and they ask, it's like two doctors in the operating room. One says, how did the heart machine work? And the other says, well, it worked great till I pulled this little tube that I wasn't supposed to move. It's the same thing with burglars and criminals. So what did you do? Brian Koberger's having this aha moment right now where he's not having a chance to share with his friends, but you can bet he wants to. But they all got together and said, let's taunt that new guy. And that's the principle. So they talk. And so that shows a level of sophistication in relationship to increased criminality. So in this case, what do we have? 2:00 in the morning is selected. That's not random. You may have a vehicle. That's not random. So here's the question. Is the suspect lowering the risk, or are they raising their risk? Okay. You're taking an 84-year-old woman out of a house. Is that a high risk or a low risk? Okay. I'd put that one in the middle. Okay. But
The
there's
risk would be higher if she is living.
right. Yeah.
But taking a deceased person, I hate to even have to go there in thoughts as a possibility. Because I think it's important to maintain hope. But the thing is, just thinking analytically, you have a higher risk if a person could be screaming, being taken out of the house. That's the other thing. How far away from this home do other people live? I was looking in that aerial photo to see how close other houses and things will be. And did you have a pet that could have been barking or doing other, I don't know. But it's a little, I guess what I keep coming back to my mind is, did what happened in this house get envisioned in advance by this offender, or are we seeing the result of things going sideways? Like in the Koberger case, it seemed clear to me that wasn't what was expected to happen. But there are some cases where the person from the beginning plans it, everything goes exactly as expected. There can be situations, for example, where you remove a person from a house because something happened that wasn't anticipated and the person has passed away, and you have to remove them to eliminate evidence or something. There are different things like that. I guess the question I have for you, Chris, is, and I know this is where your thoughts are going too, ultimately is, what is the motivation for removing a victim from a house and taking such a risk? Why would you put yourself through that? You could if you just want money, you could hold the person hostage in the house.
Well,
and,
exactly.
and send a message, give me the money and an escape vehicle. Why?
There's a lot better time to do it as well, right? If this is that scenario, and I have two scenarios in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think I shared, you and I have talked, behind the scenes, but I wanted to know, first of all, what the totality of the bedroom looks like.
Oh, yes, that'll tell us a great deal.
And remember, the sheriff has said that now they had some evidence, and that DNA evidence came back to family members that they would have expected to be in the house, i.e., whoever it belongs to, that DNA. But then he also said right behind that, and we're waiting for some other DNA that maybe we can push through CODIS. He did that.
He said CODIS?
He actually said CODIS.
Does the audience know what that means?
I think they do. Do you guys know what that? Everybody knows what CODIS is. CODIS is the offender database of not only SA offenders, RSOs, et cetera, but every felon that goes, and there are 3 levels of CODIS, by the way. Okay. APHIS is the fingerprints. APHIS is the sister to CODIS. So all the DNA swabs, buccal swabs, all that stuff goes into CODIS. All the fingerprints goes into APHIS. And then there's NIMUS, which is for gunshots, shell casings, bullets that are recovered at crime scenes and stuff. And all of these things are databases. And then they're all under the umbrella of a database called NCIC. It's National Crime Information Center. And so law enforcement in every police car around the country and every law enforcement car, if they have what they call an MDT, which is the mobile, computer system in their car, they look like this, right? You've seen them. I've gotten tickets from them. I got written up. And I was like, that dog, he didn't care. He did his job. Anyway, so in the system, the NCIC, National Crime Information Center, that bulletin that was sent out, the BOLO, the Be on the Lookout, all that information is at a fingertip press to those officers in the field. And so that's whenever they run you and they ask you for your driver's license or your social security number, your date of birth, your name, et cetera, what they're doing is they're running you through NCIC, National Crime Information Center. So if there's a warrant or anything like that, or even an Interpol warrant for your arrest, they call those red flags, all of that is going to pop up on their computer screen in their car. So in this case, the sheriff said,
interesting,
that we can double check this through CODIS. We've got other things we want going to CODIS. He didn't say it exactly like that. I'm not, verbatim. He did, but he did mention it. Now, that to me was like, bingo, wait a minute, what else is going on here? Who else do they have swabs on? Or that brought me to the second thought process was, what other type of fluids, if not only blood, potentially is in that house?
But just to clarify something, because I'm hearing this from you, and you got my thoughts kind of whirling all over the place. I want to understand this thing, this fluid or whatever that may be being put through CODIS. Was it collected at that house, or is it a sample that was collected from somebody to see if they are associated with certain kinds of offenses?
I think it came from the house, because what the sheriff said was they took the evidence and they threw it into Rapid DNA, which is there are 2 companies that do that. I mentioned those the other day. One is called Andy, ANDE, and the other is Thermal Scientific.
Okay.
And they have these Rapid DNA machines, and what they do, within 4 hours, you can get somewhat of a profile, whether male or female, et cetera. And sometimes it's good enough, depending on how much sample you have, to throw it into, certain databases.
But just to be clear, think about what would have to happen for a person to be meticulous enough to take a person out of a house to, obviously, I mean, if you've done something in the house and you want to eliminate evidence to remove a person, but then leave that kind of fluid. I mean, that's like clean the whole house up, but leave the knife sheath. It's like that sort of, it suggests some chaos went on there or something got interrupted. Whatever.
Right.
But it is interesting to think about where your thought process is going. Basically, what you're doing is you're exploring one of the possible buckets, because there's that it can't be taken off the table, as hideous as it is, as something that has to be on the checklist of a possibility, because it is a reason why a person might be targeted in the middle of the night, female. But I also think that whoever did this is male. I mean, I just think, based on statistics, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is a male attacking a female. And I'm going to guess that there was quite an age difference between them. She was not, targeted by an octogenarian offender, right? So we have to envision that being part of the story. Now, if just going along these lines, Chris, because as I said, I'm not saying which way my thoughts are going. I'm just saying we have to go through each possibility. When a sex offender does something like this, it is generally serial in nature. A person doesn't just, they're either somebody who you just have to be female. For example, Richard Ramirez had victims that were as young as little kids, all the way up to elderly, right? Because it was a randomness but generally there's a sort of paraphilic reason that you have a particular attract. And the other thing is that the more sophisticated, intelligent, kind of psychopathic type tends to know you and groom you and manipulate. Whereas the type that just breaks in and attacks you or snatches you in a vehicle tends to be more odd, more local, more the type that would be on the local registry, chances are, from previously having done things. So I think that it's interesting to think about that element of things. But it's so rare, particularly with this age, that I think the starting point would generally be something more like, is there someone who knew this individual and benefited in some way from them potentially no longer being here? Is there somebody who could have benefited? Did they want something from her that she was standing in the way of? Did she know something that was dangerous? Did she witness something? Did she walk in on something that could ruin someone's life? That kind of thing? And so, because I think that's a more common scenario. I mean, I think you'd agree, right? That kind of thing of someone who knows you, who either wants money or to get away with something, is more common. And this is the kind of thing, for example, that comes up in the Summer Wells discussion. What's more likely, in terms of probability, right? You always want to sort of think like that, and who knows in that case. But Chris, do you agree with me that in this case, it's almost better to sort of start simpler and then go to like some random outsider committing a rare offense who would have to be serial in nature, because you just wouldn't do this one time. It's too odd. So I think sort of going along those lines, what do you then start thinking would be more garden variety motivations for something like this?
Well,
right. Money would be number one, right?
Yeah, and that's where, right, we want to stay at the house right now.
Right.
Because the house has two major purposes. Number one, that's the last place where the victim was seen.
And she lives alone?
Yes, at 84. And it's the first place, okay, that the suspect originated in terms of knowledge base for the investigation.
Who was the last person to see her alive? Or at least see her. We don't know if she's alive.
Who dropped her off at church, my understanding, or from church at the house. Wait, now, before I lose my thought process.
Go ahead. I just wanted to understand that, because those little details matter in interpreting. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's a couple of things that we also have to explore here. This is what we would not necessarily, we call it a secondary contact site, potentially, the house.
Mhm.
Wherever the first contact site was, perhaps it's, a friend or a family or something, a friend of a friend, or, Nancy teaches, Bible study, and there's this weirdo at Bible study, and he,
Right.
she invited him over one day, and it's kind of like the painter in Elizabeth Smart, right? When her sister had the aha moment 4 months later, she goes, it was that guy, Emmanuel, okay, the cuckoo, okay, and this is the kind of thing that, again, if we use her now, she's a child, but if we just kind of correlate that to an 84-year-old woman, 2 o'clock in the morning, sound asleep, and a perpetrator comes into the house, okay, some people are going to say, well, that was a stranger. Well, yes, but he wasn't a stranger to the house. He had an affiliation to he had gone in there and he'd painted the house. So he knew potentially the layout, those kind of things. That's one guy in a bucket. Now, what was his motivation?
Right.
His is SA driven. Okay. All sexual assault. So now we have to ask ourselves, okay, if a person breaks into an 84-year-old woman's house, 2 o'clock in the morning, she's sound asleep, or even half asleep, or whatever the circumstances are going to be, we don't know yet. We definitely know she's in her bedroom. We definitely know she's in her house because the sheriff already told us that, and he told us right up front there's evidence of a crime inside that house. Okay. Well, what kind of crime? Is it a beating? Is it an SA? Is it, what type of crime occurred in that house? And they're not going to tell us that.
Mm.
However, they got evidence that they can send to the lab, and it was so important, they wanted to know now.
Yeah.
That's why they said we have, the sheriff kind of danced around it, the first day, rapid DNA, and go back to the first press conferences. Okay. And then, he took a political shot at the board of supervisors, God bless him. I love guys like that, bosses that say, hey, you don't give me any money, I can't solve any crimes, and I can't protect, Mrs. Guthrie simultaneously. Anyway, that was a political statement right there. I shouldn't have said that. That's exactly what he said. But he's frustrated. He was frustrated. He knows a lot more than what they're letting on to right now. Now, here's an interesting thought. Tomorrow's Thursday. He said the other day, next press conference is Thursday. Well, Kash Patel, if in fact he's flying here, guess when he's going to be here? Thursday. Okay. So that may have been a leakage of some sort, maybe nothing, but we'll find out tomorrow at the press conference. I'll be covering it. But going back to that suspect, or going back to the one of two things. So let's also think outside of the box. Tucson is 70 miles from the U.S. custom or the U.S. border. Okay. As a result of that, could that be in play? Never say it can't be in play. It's possible.
In this
Because-
case, all bets are, everything's on the table. We don't have any, clear.
Well, they
data.
have RSOs. They have offenders too, SA offenders on the other side. I can't tell you how many 261s I worked from my municipality, 30 miles from the border. Okay. How many SAs how many people I hooked up that were from across the border. Okay. And that's not a political statement. That's just reality of what the possibilities are here. So here's the question. Is that why the Border Patrol and Customs CBP is there at the house tonight? Why are they there?
Right.
Okay. Because they have technology, believe it or not, that, technology, they have databases. When you come, and they used to get this information, believe it or not, down in Ecuador on the border. And even with Guatemala, they do, data marking, i.e. eyes. There's things that they have. So by the time you make it up to the US border, when the checkpoints are there, they take them and they put them through these little devices like the DMV. Well, guess what? They had your picture or they had your eyes,
Right.
2,000 miles before that. But here's one thing that they don't do on the other side is register RSOs. So let's just think out of the box because that's what we're doing right now. What's the other fluid? I don't know yet.
Right. Who knows?
I'm praying it's just more blood. Okay. But if it's not, then don't be blown away. Okay. If we learn hypothetically that it could, maybe it's in the ballpark. So now let's go to the next one.
Right. And Chris, let me just say something as we're painting this picture. One piece of information we haven't mentioned yet that I saw in the news was that apparently someone said, a law enforcement source said, that the victim's pacemaker synced to her Apple Watch stopped syncing at 2 a.m. on Sunday.
Yeah, and if that's the
I
case,
think it's an extremely important piece of information, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, interpret that as one might, but the thing is that is important, I think. I mean, does it have the implication for you that it seems to have for me?
I mean, I don't know enough about pacemakers to say. I mean, obviously that's a problem. Okay, and believe it or not, I think that's also a piece of the puzzle in the Suzanne Morphew killing. Okay, that her Apple Watch stopped at a certain time as well. So that could be problematic for, again, to that letter, proof of life.
Right. Or she was taken so far away from it that it stopped syncing.
Which now you go to the blood evidence at the porch.
Right. Exactly.
Hypothetically, is she walking or are they carrying her?
Right.
That's a problem.
Right. But I'm mentioning this because if the thing because obviously, let me be crystal clear, we're going down all the paths. We're not saying which path we think happened here, right? We're going down all the paths. And if we're going down that SA path as a possibility, which you always have to do, the question is, let's say, God forbid, the reason the pacemaker stops and there's blood and whatever is that the victim is deceased. What would be the reason for them being deceased in an SA situation? Well, the literature says most of the time is that you've asserted so much force during what you were doing that the person has passed away.
Typically strangulation.
Right. But the person will sometimes pass away because of what is happening, or there's an elimination of a witness.
Right.
Generally. Okay. And then in the rarest cases would be the elimination of the victim because it's part of a sexual thrill, for a person, which is almost certainly going to be serial.
And for the record, we're not saying that.
No.
Okay, right. For the record, what we're saying is the thought processes Gary and I are having right now is exactly the same thought process those investigators are having. I guarantee it.
If they've got FBI,
we're just talking out loud.
Professionals in there, believe me, they're going through all the buckets because you have to, as dark as they can. So this one, I sort of want to get it quickly out of the way because I think it's always more probable that isn't what you have going on. But the problem is we don't know what that fluid is. That disturbed me. The fact that there might be this sort of someone looking at stuff they shouldn't on the internet is a little creepy, a little disturbing for the possibility of a sexual flavor to things. But I think that let's sort of put that one there. Where would your thoughts go next? After the possibility of sexual, then it's more pragmatic for the offender. Money or elimination of a person because they're an impediment, right? So what would your thoughts be there?
Okay, so let's go towards this is a financial
right
play. Okay, financial crime.
I'm listening. I just need to shut the camera 1 second to
Yeah,
adjust
go ahead.
something here.
Go ahead. You got to make a sandwich?
No, I got to fix my Wi-Fi router. I'll be right back.
Okay. Are you guys, okay, let me answer this question while Gary's away. In victim risk specific continuum, could the level increase due to the prominence of Savannah? That is a really good question, Wisdom. And, I would say yes, that could move her towards, the medium play in the middle. But it's still low enough because of the other circumstances, right? Being at the house, 2:00 in the morning, et cetera. Okay. So I hope that answers your question. So it could move the dial a little more to the right, but not enough to say, okay, maybe it's not somebody, within the circle of that house. Okay. What are my thoughts? Thank you, Texas lady. What are my thoughts on possible cartel crime? The cartels, typically, as we know, in South America / Mexico, et cetera, and even across the U.S. border into the Phoenix area. The Phoenix area has a real problem with ransom, being held for ransom, family members, et cetera. A lot of times, if people are being trafficked across the border, the cartels will hold them on one side of the border to pay back more money, additional money that's owed, and then of course they will hold people for ransom. Okay, on the Mexico side of the border, if the individual's on the American side of the border, and they'll hold them for funding. I shared that case with you the other day about the El Torito homicide. Literally, they got this guy. They stole $5,000 from the El Torito, and the victim, his name was Dave. He was a lieutenant in the Marine Corps, and he was working a part-time job out in town. And anyway, he got in a fight with this guy. They got $5,000 out of the robbery, but Dave was able to get the knife at one point and actually severed the guy's liver, the suspect's liver.
Wow.
They went to TJ and they found a doctor, and you're not going to believe this. Guess how much the doctor charged, right? The question was, how much do you have? I got $5,000, man. Well, he fixed him for $5,000 while the other suspect went to Mexico City. This guy gets patched up and, gets into a knife fight, another one in TJ, and ends up losing his life. Okay. So for the cartels to come in, I think the only play, if in fact it's at that level in any way, shape, or form, is because of who her daughter is.
That's
And
a big part of the victimology.
right. And who they think maybe, okay, we can, extort these folks, take mom, extort her, and now we have more of an extortion, kidnap for extortion. And that's a whole different mindset. Okay. And so is that possible? Anything is possible at this point. The sheriff hasn't given us more. We don't have enough data, right? As Sherlock Holmes says, right? We need more data. Okay.
Can't make bricks without clay.
You can't make bricks without clay. And you certainly don't want, to prescribe a medication when you don't even know what the diagnosis is. So,
right.
However, this is how you get to the diagnosis, by having these conversations, all of us listening, all of us throwing, questions in there, agree, disagree. That's all good. That's all good stuff. It doesn't mean that's the right answer right now.
Right. If people could be flies on the wall when we were having a discussion where we're consulting on a case, like let's say the Cold Case Foundation or something, they would see that we would walk through in a similar way all these possibilities, buckets, victimology, suspectology, etc. And this is the kind of thing that you do when you're thinking. We're thinking out loud.
Right. And so, you know, like Katrina says, no, the cartel does not roll that way at all. No, they're much more brutal than just kidnapping mom and sending a letter.
And the
Okay.
message would be quite clear.
The message would be very clear. And there would probably be a video attached to it. Okay. And I don't think we have that here. What we have is an email to TMZ. Now, that's, if in fact that's even legit, that tells us a lot about the potential. Either somebody's trying to get, and this is Gary's lane, where somebody's just trying to get attention, or if they are the suspects, you know, they're not the sharpest tools in the shed. Okay. Which may be pretty good for us. Good guys 1, bad guys 0. Okay.
Right.
So now let's stay with this lane of financial gain. Well,
right. And I just want to say, Chris, that I looked up the target audience for TMZ, and the primary audience is in the 18 to 34-year-old range, at least according to what I found on the web. And so it attracts a younger, more male audience than traditional news, else entertainment news. And that's interesting. I think the New York Times said, I found that 60% of the people who view it are under 50. So I think that's interesting. If an offender, if this is real, it's interesting that an offender would pick that particular outlet. Tells you, it's a little clue. You see what I mean?
yeah.
Right. It's intriguing. But it could also be that you have somebody who happens to be young and insinuating themselves or taking advantage. I mean, this could be, for example, a possibility where some other person who wants attention or money is just milking, is just parasitically attaching themselves to a different offense. Well, that's right, to different.
One that went to a news organization.
Right.
And apparently that didn't get traction. And then it went to TMZ, and, you know, that got a lot of attention. And the sheriff then, you know, confirmed, yeah, in fact, we're aware of it, but we're sorting through that. Okay. Now, what's interesting is what's come out tonight with Savannah saying, look, you know, we're ready to talk. Okay. And that letter that she read was probably framed very carefully through some conversations, because it hits a lot of the highlighted things.
Yeah.
How you would want to deliver it.
And also, Chris, listening to it, when I was thinking about victimology, the sense I had listening to it was that this is the type of person who probably doesn't have an enemy in the world. This is like a beloved person, right? I mean, wasn't that the feeling you have to? This is not somebody that you say is beloved, but you look into their life and they're awful. They're going around being nasty, making enemies, whatever. You get the feeling of like a warm, beloved person. Was that your sense too?
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want to read into what everybody, you know, right now with the brother and the sister, you know, but I can tell you, because, you know, the sister may be going, why is the ICAC team at my house? You know, she may not know something, that there are other things going on, you know, into that circumstance.
Right. So now you're moving into the, maybe the victim was
and
caught
this
up
could be
in
a play, you know, Rob Wolven, you know, why only 2,500? That could be on purpose to drop the concept of, dude, you're running out of gas. We don't have any money.
Right.
You know,
like you might have thought I was a rich and famous person.
One of the things that you're trained is, if, you know, I've had people on bridges many times, and the first thing they want to do is talk to the chief. Okay. I want the chief. You're just, you know, I'm just a talking head. what you don't say is, you know what, let me go get him. And in the chat, why do you think that is? Just our friends here from our family here at TIR. And by the way, if you've not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and please hit the thumb. That's the first time I've said that tonight in 2 hours. Just goes to show you our value system here at TIR. And we appreciate each and every one of you, and we always appreciate our mods. But more importantly, we all, even our mods, appreciate each and every one of you, right? Exactly. If I say, well, you know what, let me go get the chief, okay? I have given away all my chips on the poker table, okay?
It's very revealing.
Yeah. What you say to them is, you know what, let me see if he's available. Okay. And then you come back and then you say, you know, Frank, I ran it up the flagpole and he's out to dinner with his wife. Maybe I think he's probably in a movie. Because now you've just bought maybe 3 more hours of communication. I've actually had people say, well, when he gets out of the movie, can we get him? I say, you know what? I'll run it by him for sure. Absolutely. Let's see if I can check on it. Okay. And so that's the one thing you don't do. And this kind of concept says, hey, we only got $2,500. Okay. Remember the story I told you? I traded a whole family for one bullet at a time. I had a father who was holding his 4 kids hostage in a car. And I traded bottles of water first, and then it was candy for one kid. Hey, does Frank want some Hershey Kisses? Yeah. Well, you know what? I've got a bag out here. Can you let her out? And I'll give the other kid a Hershey Kiss. He did. He let one of the kids out. And I gave him 1 Hershey Kiss. 1. And he was furious. You had said you had a whole bag. I said, well, you want another one? Give me a bullet.
Oh.
I'll give you 2. And that's probably what that 2,500 is about. So let's talk about now this ransom concept or financial motivation. Gary, what's your thought on the financial motive and what type of personality is potentially pushing behind this?
Well, generally, when you have now you're talking about a stranger who takes a person and is capitalizing financially. Generally, it'll be somebody who has researched you and or your family and the people who care about you and figured out that it would be there would be a windfall that could potentially be associated. And so it takes a kind of calculating person who, in the cool light of reason, could do something like this without much compunction, who might be a kind of a risk taker, who might be somebody who thinks of people in an objectified way, like Machiavellian way, where these are just kind of pawns that you're taking advantage of. But in other words, you wouldn't expect a person with a warm and fuzzy personality to be able to do something like this. You have to be somewhere in that kind of personality, awry kind of camp. And I think that, as I said, and you said earlier, generally with this, the person gets right to the point. That, we have your loved one, send so-and-so, comes right away. Sometimes they don't even leave the home. They just kidnap, they go in with a weapon and they make demands. I mean, Chris, you've been in situations like that where a negotiator has to go talk to somebody who's holed up in a house with a victim, or bank or something like that. So, it's what bothers me is that there are features here that are more consistent with how do I say this? I'm not convinced that this is necessarily financial as much as that someone is taking advantage of the fact that it could look that way. That's my instinct based on the facts so far, is I would lean towards a situation where it's not, because ultimately, what is the person going to get out of this?
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
want
going to the
millions in
TMC, and
Bitcoin.
if that's true, if that's even true. Well, Chris, how if this person is sophisticated, let's say technologically, into Bitcoin, whatever, wouldn't the person know that you trace this in 2 seconds?
Yes.
I mean, it'd be stupid. I would be asking questions like, is there anybody who's gonna receive money because of a will? Is there somebody that might have been doing something that this victim knew about that could be a problem? Is there someone who considered this individual an impediment in the sense that they did something and now the person is a witness, like assaulting them or some other thing? In other words, I would be thinking more along those lines. And what I think is that because you might have somebody, sending in these ransom things who isn't even related to the situation, the offender might be going, oh, goody, because this falls right into my hands, because now it throws people off the scent. I think we have to consider the possibility that there are a lot of red herrings here, and that you just have to think simpler from a perspective. I think in an investigation in this, you would start smaller and say, who benefits?
Well, and that's why.
Which I know is where you're going with your
Well,
thoughts.
well, and that's why ICAC is an anomaly.
Right.
It's when we look at these things, guys and gals, as all of us have done now together for many years, if we think about this one and you go, okay, FBI, I understand why they're there. Check resources, finance, blah, 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 right? Interviews, blah, blah, blah. Evidence, yada. Customs Border Patrol, check. 70 miles from the United States border. Let's not, they got teams, trackers, et cetera, dogs, equipment, graded stuff, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. Maybe not an international connection after all, right? But they're there. Okay, good. Check. Okay. You've got DHS, no problem, because they can do stuff rather rapidly with some of the systems that they have. They have resources, et cetera, et cetera. FBI response team, the CAS team, FBI, cellular analysis teams, check, check, check. And then you go, and who are you with? I'm ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. What the heck are you doing here? We got
That's
called
why
out.
I asked about if something was being put into codex, if there was something found at the house, or someone is asked to give a sample or to put into code, but I think it's very, very important to clarify again and again. We can cast no aspersion. All we're doing is laying out buckets where our thoughts would go if this were a case we were being asked to look at. And I think we have to go through each of these kind of buckets. But Chris, in your experience, isn't someone who knows the victim with some pragmatic aim more common than some kind of random pervert who breaks into a house targeting an individual to assault them, because it would probably be serial in nature, because
Yes.
okay. And the other thing is, do you agree that there are a lot of things about this that don't look like an ordinary abduction? Like, simplest example, if you are kidnapping a person where you're going to have a ransom, the person is precious cargo, so to speak. I mean, I don't know how else they're precious. They have to be kept alive, and you have to prove that they're alive. There wouldn't be bleeding and abandoned medications. That's odd. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
You would have a recording of the person talking and saying, "I'm okay, but you need to send the money." Whatever. Why is all of that missing? And I'll tell you something. That's what I'm trying to tell you about this elimination murder thing. Where I tend to see abduction stories that are missing all that stuff in that way, that don't make sense, it tends to be things that are made to look like abductions, where somebody just doesn't know how somebody would truly operate. And the other thing is, it doesn't look like a professional abduction situation. You see what I'm saying? That I remember when John Douglas said that about, I think he said that about John Bonet, that if that really were an abduction situation, it didn't look like a professional one, right? With that note, that whole silly, remember that whole thing? That, like, it looked like somebody making it look like there was an abduction. But in that case, I think that child was already deceased. It was a big red herring. So, so this looks more like that. I'm just saying, in my experience, it looks more like that. And yet I'm agnostic. I don't feel there's enough data to commit to a theory.
Yeah, I mean, if there's you have to eliminate everybody around that house still who had contact in the house.
First, that's where you'd start, right? You
Right.
as an investigator, right?
Well, even up to 4 days later, you don't leave that concept yet. And I think that's why they went back today and they shut it back down. I said this from the day it happened, the moment it happened. I said, okay, everything in the VRC, the victim risk continuum, is telling us it's over here, not over here yet. You're not over here yet. You have to stay over here. Okay, well, who's over here? Well, you've got the family members. You've got she's got a pool. Who delivered that Amazon package that's sitting on the porch? Okay. All the over here's are still over here. Who are the friends of the pool maker, of the pool cleaner?
Right.
Who are the friends of the family? Okay, you're the brother. Yeah. Okay. That's your mom. Yeah. Okay. Well, who are your friends?
Yeah.
How about you? You're the sister. Yeah. Who are your friends?
Right.
Where
That's the smartest way to approach this, Chris.
did you eat? Where did you eat last night? And did you take your mother? What time did you drop her off? Did you go to any restaurants? Did you go to any gas stations? Did you go to any supermarkets? Where did you take mom before you dropped her off? Okay. If in fact she dropped her off. The same thing with the church lady. Okay, where did you guys go? Well, we were at church. Okay, what time did you pick her up? Well, she drove. Okay, fine. Now you want to find out, resources into where did Nancy go? Who did she talk to? Is there video? And if there's video, where, what, who, what, when, where, and why? Okay.
Right.
And so what right now, the investigators are still in the why phase, not the how phase. The how phase comes over time. The why phase stays constant in an investigation. Whenever a good investigator, if you're interviewing somebody, says, well, why do you say that? Because what you're doing there is you're projecting this idea of, okay, what's in your head? Where are you going? Are you in your secret life, your private life, or your public life right now?
Mm.
With the brother-in-law, hypothetically, who's not been listed as a suspect, by the way.
Right.
Okay, for the record.
Reckless of us to not say that.
Right. I mean, for all we know, that's why the other folks are at his house. I don't know. I don't know what that's connected to. I think he's a school teacher. Somebody said he's a school teacher, a 5th grade school teacher. Well, that could be a problem. Okay.
But Chris, the audience is asking something that I think, or I saw it earlier in the chat, and it's a really good question for you.
Okay.
The question is, why would this case be federal? What would be something that would make the FBI involved as opposed to the local? And I know the answer, but I'm curious. I think it'd be good to answer it, to explain the kinds of things that could turn this into a federal case.
Well, maybe there's evidence that she was actually moved and potentially, brought to other places.
Or perhaps an internet element.
Well, the internet element wouldn't necessarily bring the feds into it. Okay. A lot of times, if you don't have the resources, now they won't be the point of contact. The POC is the sheriff. Nanos. It's their case.
Right. So you think they're just using resources? They've requested
The feds have resources up the wazoo. Okay. And, and they can get it quickly. Now, and that's what was really interesting about this from the get-go. They quickly were trying to get this DNA hit.
Yeah.
I mean, within a couple of hours. Now, typically in, situations, you're not standing in front of the public and saying, we have a rapid DNA machine. Ours happened to be down, so we had to go to Phoenix. And within, the next day, he was like, well, we know who the DNA, some of it belongs to. It belongs to family members. I heard him on AZ11, I think, Arizona Family, which is a great channel, by the way, for this case. Shout out to those guys. They're doing fantastic work. And quite frankly, shout out to Brian Enton, too. That guy's doing great work, too. He's on the ground. And, man, and he's, you got to love him. I mean, he's out there kicking the dirt and causing the dust. So the feds would be there because there are a lot of resources. Now, some of the windows that are open here for the defense right away is they shut the scene down. Once they did that, okay, they had to go back to a judge and say, Your Honor, we have additional information that's taking us back to the house. And another judge had to sign off and said, okay, go secure the scene again. And so that's today where they went back down there this afternoon and they're working it tonight. And they threw tape up. Now, they could be throwing luminol in the house or Blue Star. And you'll see them in there with an ALS. It's called an alternate light source. They call it an ALS. And everybody gets their, little suits on, and you put your goggles on, and you go through and you spray chemicals into the house and see what's glowing. And there's a lot of things that glow. Fluids, body fluids glow. I've told this one before. Believe it or not, Orange Crush is the worst type of soda that will blow up a crime scene. Okay. I mean, you haven't lived until you've seen an Orange Crush soda glow. And everybody goes, holy crap, look at this over here. Okay. And it's an Orange Crush. They hit it with a swab. It's a freaking Orange Crush, right?
Those chemicals are amazing, Chris. I saw on a documentary when I was doing research for the chapter in the book we're working on Lizzie Borden that I did with Ann Burgess. I found that they were able to use chemical like that in the Lizzie Borden house and still found blood traces.
Yeah, that stuff
from the 19th century.
That stuff, folks think they can just make it go away. And a lot of times, unless you have a lot of time and a lot of knowledge, how to do it, it's really, really hard.
It's amazing stuff. But somebody in the audience asked a very interesting question. They asked if we saw similarities with the abduction of John Paul Getty's grandson in 1973. Do you remember that story? I mean, I wasn't born yet, but I remember the story. I know the story. And the story was that
you were born in 73?
No, not yet.
The
world was not ready for it. We'll get into that another time. But
I thought he was the old one.
No, I wasn't born in 73. Very funny. So I hope you're kidding, Chris.
Yeah, of course I'm kidding, Gary.
I know, I'm joking. But anyway, that story, as I remember it, is that this kid, he was 16. He, of course, is one of the many grandchildren of this brilliant, John Paul Getty is like synonymous with richness. And he was abducted by mafiosi, by an Italian mafia gang. And they wanted $17 million from the grandfather, and the grandfather's response, which was I love. Grandfather's response was, "If I give a penny of it, they'll kidnap all the other kids. They'll know that they could do it." And then what happened is they sent his ear, his severed ear, and a little bit of his hair to a news agency, if I remember correctly. So the similarity that people are talking about is this idea of going to, I think it was a media outlet. I got to double check it, but I think it was. And they sent it to a newspaper, I think. And the idea is, the similarity that people are saying is, look, if it turns out that this TMZ thing, whatever, is real, that it's that same flavor of going, to a big source and what. But you notice there was a little bit of like a proof we have him thing in sending an ear and hair, which is very typical in those kind of more professional abductions like mafiosi would do. I think this, I see no actual reason to believe yet. We have no proof whatsoever, I hate to say it, that the victim in this crime is alive. There has been no proof furnished, only a financial demand that may not even be from the offender. It is entirely possible that while we're all looking over there, someone else is doing something here. And I'm sorry, but so far, I think we have to be open to the possibility that this poor woman is no longer with us, because think of the pacemaker.
Yeah, well, just think of her age. I think law enforcement, like us, is hopeful that she's with us, but statistically and based on the time that this whole thing is where it's at right now, probably not.
I mean, we don't know, because I've seen.
We don't know. We have no idea, but
right.
I'm hopeful that she is.
Oh, of course.
I am, but
Hope springs.
at the same time, yes, we mentioned this a little bit ago. Thoughts on Cash Patel heading to Tucson. Some more is going on than we realize. I totally agree with you. In fact, the sheriff said, on the last press conference, I'll see you Thursday for the next one. It just so happens that Cash is on a plane, if that's in fact true, and he's going to be here on Thursday.
Well,
he'll be at the press conference if he's here.
But, it is interesting, in point of fact, the grandson of John Paul Getty was found. He was alive. He was traumatized and died in his 50s. Developed drug problem. Died in his 50s. Right. His ear had been severed and so forth, but he was alive. It does happen, but you would surface a lot faster and you'd send proof of life. We may wake up, and there's a huge development in this case, a huge break. But what I'm afraid of is that there's also the possibility that her fate will become clearer, and then the story will unravel rapidly. I agree that it is extremely interesting that the federal government is there, because, if it didn't involve a celebrity, it would still be a very unusual story. But I'm not sure it would have the massive kind of, and again, that's why I also have in the back of my mind that, is there a secondary aim to this? Yeah. So who knows? Who knows? I
totally agree with.
I'm paralyzed.
The fact that if, we don't know, right? I'm getting it in the chat that Cash Patel's on his way. Okay. Well, yeah. There's more going on if in fact he's showing up, but that could be just, for the presser, right? They need a photograph.
All I know is that I cannot imagine what it must feel like to be this poor family right now. The things that must be going through their heads and so forth. It's just so scary. And that's why I hate even uttering the possibility that she may not be here anymore. And the way that it could have happened and all of that, it's just too horrifying. So my heart goes out. I really, really, you could see these people are They running the gamut between heartbroken and paralyzed. This is rough, and I just want to say, our hearts go out. I hope everybody here is praying for justice and peace for this family, if it's even possible.
So
Whatever has happened, they'll never be the same.
let's play this one more time for everybody if you've just joined with us.
Yeah. I mean, it breaks my heart.
I think this has been a great conversation too tonight. By the way.
Chris, when do we not have? I wish people could hear the ones we have offline. Boy, would they be eating popcorn.
Okay, so and if you look at Savannah here, she's out of gas.
Poor thing.
That poor girl is emotionally drained, and because she has the most high-profile job in the family, she's the point of contact. Now, that's also one of the things here that in HNT,
right,
you want to have a single POI. Point of interest, point of POC, point of contact. You want to have one person with the family, but typically you don't want to have the family in the chain of conversation, unless you're in a situation where you're just putting them up front right away. Because right now, the first thing that they want to do is they want that, proof of life. Show us what you got. Okay, that's the number one priority right now. Because everything insists on evidence of the victim being alive. Everything.
Of course.
And what this does, it confirms that the situation is real, as well as it buys additional time for further conversations.
Well, do you have the text of the note, Chris?
I haven't seen the text of the note.
I want to see the text. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know it. I don't know if it's been released, is what I'm asking you. Has it been put out?
If they did that, that's a mistake.
I don't know it to be out.
Because what that does is it takes away from this concept of, developing rapport and then creating that empathy with the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Because remember, for the perpetrator, this whole situation is transactional. This is a business deal.
If it's an abduction with that motive.
If it's an abduction with that motive, it's a business deal for them.
Right. And so why pussyfoot around? Why not take care of it immediately? You could lose, as I said, such a person. I hate saying this because it sounds so objectifying, but such a person would consider the victim precious cargo. And an 84-year-old woman on medication that is not in her possession, who was bleeding and probably needed medical attention, you would hurry up and do what it is you were going to do. You would not pussyfoot around and be sending, messages where there's no proof and telling anybody, where you were and what you expected and making demands and all that. You see what I'm saying? It's like the Judge Judy rule. If it doesn't make sense, it isn't true.
So
but it doesn't add up unless the person's an idiot.
Well, one of the things that would be going on behind the scenes, I'm not going to give away anything a lot, but I will say this: they said, "Yeah, we want $1 million in Bitcoin or $10 million or whatever it is," right? So one of the things you do in any conversation, specifically like this, is what they call mirroring. Okay. And you say, okay, you need, if let's say a suspect says, we need $1 million by tomorrow or else. Okay. You don't put the or else at the end. You say, okay, $1 million by tomorrow. Got it. Because the effect of that is it encourages them to elaborate even further. And it reveals more information, motivation, weaknesses without you pushing. So remember, we're at if this is a kidnapping scenario, and we don't know yet, but if it is, because the sheriff has not come out and said, we know that Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped. We know this. We are in negotiations. Please tamper it down. We need the public's help in this. And so I'm not going to go out on a limb here in any way, shape, or form and jeopardize this 84-year-old woman's life, if in fact that's a possibility. Okay. Because the last thing we want, especially on on a YouTube platform, is if the suspect's watching, I'm not going to give away anything that may be going on behind the scenes. Okay. But this concept now of where Savannah, where they've already released this idea that says, we want to see moms alive. Okay. And the second thing is she's creating this idea of empathy towards her mother. We love our mother. It's kind of like, a 261 victim saying, please don't do that. I have 2 children. It's the same principle. Okay. And so it's sad to see, unfortunately, all of this weight is on her shoulders right now in this letter. So let's not read into it, body language and all this other stuff, because she's not the suspect. She's not. We don't know who the other circle of influences are around her, but she was in New York. And she jumped on a plane, came out here when she found out her mother disappeared.
Of course.
Okay. So let's take a listen to what she's saying on behalf of the family.
On behalf of our family, we want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved mom, Nancy. We feel them, and we continue to believe that she feels them too. Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. She's funny, spunky, and clever. She has grandchildren that adore her and crowd around her and cover her with kisses. She loves fun and adventure. She is a devoted friend. She is full of kindness and knowledge. Talk to her and you'll see.
The light is missing from our lives. Nancy is our mother. We are her children. She is our beacon. She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances. She chooses joy day after day, despite having already passed through great trials of pain and grief. We are always going to be merely human, just normal human people who need our mom. Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you.
Our mom is our heart and our home. She's 84 years old. Her health, her heart is fragile. She lives in constant pain. She is without any medicine. She needs it to survive. She needs it not to suffer. We too have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen.
Now, the last part there's 2 things that strike me. We have heard about the ransom letter. And then the second, 20 towards the end is we're ready to talk. We're 4 days into this. If that ransom letter was sent 3 days ago, to respond on the fourth day is interesting. Because the suspect's been holding their mother for 4 days now and going, why aren't they talking to me? And then the family comes on and says, we heard about the letter or the ransom letter. Not, we've seen it, we acknowledge it, we know it, but they've heard about it.
Where was this released?
Well, on, I think, Instagram.
So again, remember my point about TMZ. It almost suggests that they think the person who did this is younger.
Yeah.
To release it on Instagram. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, if you thought somebody was older, you wouldn't put it there. I mean, at least I wouldn't. I would put the statement in a, let's say, a newspaper or something like that. But there's something about this, or certain newspaper, it's interesting to think about that this is the pool in which you're going to potentially find the person. I just think that's interesting.
That is an interesting. Let's listen to it again, because if this was crafted by the BAU,
On behalf of our family, we want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved mom, Nancy. We feel them, and we continue to believe that she feels them too. Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. She's funny, spunky, and clever. She has grandchildren that adore her and crowd around her and cover her with kisses. She loves fun and adventure. She is a devoted friend. She is full of kindness and knowledge. Talk to her and you'll see.
The light is missing from our lives. Nancy is our mother. We are her children. She is our beacon. She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances. She chooses joy day after day, despite having already passed through great trials of pain and grief. We are always.
I wonder what that means.
thoughts, Gary? I mean, just.
I'm confused.
Is going to be merely human, just normal human people who need our mom.
What I'm confused about, Chris, is I can't figure out if this was a personal choice to do this or if it was advised and constructed.
Normal human people, just like our mother.
Right. It sounds like if they were advised, somebody has an idea of the kind of offender who did it and is saying, say this because it will have this kind of effect potentially.
Okay, well, you would be that guy. So what kind of who would you say this? Who would you say this to?
It would be somebody where you thought that it would become harder for somebody to do terrible things to somebody if you made them a human instead of just an object in the eyes of the offender. So the idea is you say you say Nancy is our mother, you use terms that are going to activate emotions in the average person, when we were children, that she's been through hard time. In other words, haven't you? You know what it feels like to be, the power is in your hands. You please, she could live or die, if she doesn't have her medication. So there is that. But it could also be that they have a feeling about the kind of person, and they were not advised to do, they just felt compelled. I mean, you have somebody who's a media figure whose first impulse might be, let me go to the megaphone of media. You don't know. I only know that people have a right to do whatever they want to do when they're dealing with a beloved family member who's missing. I can see that they're heartbroken. I mean, they're zombified and kind of, like there aren't enough tears in the world, here. And that feels very palpable to me. I mean, they seem a sea, don't they? Lost at sea, looking at them.
Yeah, I didn't see the brother. Somebody said the brother responded. Let me look for another one.
Right. But remember, when you're dealing with, like, I remember when the Koberger thing happened, the Koberger case happened, that awful quadruple murder. And I remember somebody saying on a podcast I was on, oh, it had to be so and so because that person doesn't have any affect when they talk about it, and it's such a terrible thing. Yeah, well, I've seen a lot of people affected by tragedy or things in family members, and one reaction is to flatten and not look responsive. Another is to become hysterical or tearful. Chris, you've seen people responding to accidents and murders and everything. You can run the gamut from hysterical to dissociated.
Yeah,
right. I mean, all bets are off with grief and
Yeah.
trauma, and right.
Yeah, I'm not reading that into it.
No. I'm saying in case that's what anybody's implying. I think it's very important to understand. Don't read into anybody's reactions because
Here's another one.
we all have different ways of dealing.
Let me see if I can get this one up here.
I only know that if I were in their shoes, I would be beyond lost.
For our beloved mom, Nancy. We feel them, and we continue to believe that she feels them too. Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. She's funny, spunky, and clever. She has grandchildren that adore her and crowd around her and cover her with kisses. She loves fun and adventure. She is a devoted friend. She is full of kindness and knowledge. Talk to her and you'll see.
I love
The light is missing from our lives.
I love the implication of saying that she was fiercely loving, because it's like saying, yeah, you may think that you have power through your aggression and you're taking someone and doing God knows what, but true strength is loving people and having people who care about you. It's like a little dig at a certain type of person. See, like, think, for example, Chris, of the things people said to Koberger in courtroom. The most powerful things to say to somebody like that is to say something like, we're loved. People like us. We don't need to make a science out of how to get people, because, like, we just do. We were born with a gene. You don't. Nobody likes you. You know what I mean? On your best day, it took you needed a weapon to make somebody even look, care about you, to look at you, that kind of thing. And sometimes there's a little of that in those kind of statements. But I think what this is just glancing at this, I think this is terrified people where they were holding back and probably had law enforcement saying, like, keep everything quiet. We don't know what's going on, and after a few days, people are just sort of itching and going, like, we have to do something. We're terrified. Like, the reality of this is setting in. Like, where is she? We don't even know if she's alive. Should we be mourning? Should we be out with searchlights? What should we be doing? And then you do this kind of thing. And I think it's like it looks like something you do when you're getting more and more scared and you're losing a sense of what do we do now? That's how I would feel about it. Looking
I
at
love that. I love your insight. That's just fantastic. Yeah, look at the pain on her face. I mean,
yeah,
this is not good.
it's terrifying. And it's setting in.
Yeah.
Nancy
You know what I
is
mean?
our mother. We are her children. She is our beacon. She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances. She chooses joy day after day. Despite having already passed through great trials of pain and grief, we are always going to be merely human, just normal human people who need our mom. Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you.
Our mom is our heart and our home. She's 84 years old. Her health, her heart is fragile. She lives in constant pain. She is without any medicine. She needs it to survive. She needs it not to suffer.
See, Chris, part of the problem,
Me too.
the danger with that kind of, I mean, it's very important, but part of the trouble is if you haven't spent a lot of time with really awful offenders, as we have, you don't realize as a human being that if you're dealing with a sadistic or psychopathic person, you're amusing them by saying, she suffers, she, whatever. Because if you're dealing with an awful personality, the person's going, great, good, good. Everybody's in pain now. Look how much power I have. Who cares about her? You see what I mean?
Yep.
So that it's sad that you have to even think about that. But saying those things implies thinking that you have somebody with intact compassion. And I think that's what you were getting at in the beginning of the show, that somebody's trying to feel out an empathy level.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? It's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody just asked, what about all three being there? What they're trying to do is create what Dr. Brucato just said. They're trying to create this. Is there empathy that we can work with, negotiate with? And if the answer doesn't come,
Or guilt. Right.
or guilt, something, they're going to leverage that. Let's finish, because the first one I played only went to this point, and this one's longer.
You have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us. Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman. You are God's precious daughter, Nancy. We believe and know that even in this valley, He is with you. Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere.
Well, I'll wait. I'll wait before I say this.
We will not rest. Your children will not rest until we are together again. We speak to you every moment, and we pray without ceasing, and we rejoice in advance for the day that we hold you in our arms again. We love you, Mom.
Love you, Mom.
We love you, Mom. Stay strong.
We love you, Mom. We love
Chris, it breaks my heart because you have the sense that on a certain level,
Tossing a
people that are afraid they may never see their mother again feel as if they have to get out what it is that they want to say to her, what they'd want to say to her if they could see her one more time. You know, that kind of thing. Kind of makes me feel like hanging up and calling up some people and saying, you know, I love you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's remember
You know what I'm saying?
to what Lou is saying here.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a no-brainer on that. You know, you're so right, Lou. Obvious vast difference between this plea and Barry Morphew. I mean, and then Barry, you know, remember Barry introduced everything, right? The mountain lion, etc. Here they're saying just be strong. This is a good point. Could the blood outside be the perps from breaking out the camera? They confirmed her blood was found inside, but haven't said the blood outside was hers.
That could be what they're looking at.
That's a great point. And I'm also, you know, one of the things that Gary and I were talking about earlier
Yeah.
is this idea that it may not only just be blood. Are there other fluids in that building or in that house? Is it air? Is it fibers? Anything forensically that you potentially could pull DNA off of? So, but they wanted it quickly, and this was a picture, you know, obviously that's floating around, you know, out there. I'm gonna point this out one more time.
Yeah.
So this is the photograph up on the porch. The bad part in this particular situation is the media had access to the crime scene and took pictures of this. And now I'm sure they had processed this, they took photos and all this other stuff. But one of the questions I have is if you look here again, I want to point this out, I'm circling it. You may not see my cursor moving, but you see this blood drop. This is 90-degree blood drop. And this leaf over or this green piece came from all of this stuff on the porch. The fact that this is over the blood tells us that it came after the blood. Yes, the sheriff has said all DNA is Nancy's. However, they are also waiting for something else to come back because he mentioned it yesterday. He did confirm that most of it belongs to the family, but they are waiting for some other additional information coming back. So we'll see.
Chris, I'll answer one of the questions that came, which is, is it really likely that an offender of the type who did this would actually see that post? I think the clues to the personality of this individual that I see so far suggest to me that this is a person who would be very heavily monitoring all the press surrounding this situation, would be very interested. And don't you think, Chris?
Yes.
Right. I mean, this person, anything that's put out there, they're seeing it. Probably this too.
Yeah, and that's why if you are seeing it, you know, please follow what the family has just asked you to do. And you know, it's actually a good way to go out, Gary. We're 3 hours into this,
No.
and so.
And it's, remember what we said once to another offender, Chris. We said, just remember, if you're out there and you hear this, you may run from people, but one day you have to meet your maker, and you can't outrun that. And you know, people are a little kinder to people who come forward and tell the truth and break down and admit what they did, than people who try to conceal and run and capitalize and just keep making it worse and worse and worse and worse. And if there's a shred of humanity or kindness in such an individual, they would understand that they've introduced into the world a colossal evil that has now ruined many lives. And if the goal was attention, and if the goal was money, the goal was to hide something, just think about how hideous and petty and small all of those things are. And is it really worth it? Is anything worth it? what is the value of a life? The other person's or yours? I sometimes think that about offenders. If you're Koberger and you go in and you don't into a house and you kill people and you don't think about the value of their life, you also haven't paused and thought about the fact that you may wind up stuffed in a jail cell and your own life is destroyed. If you're selfish, think even just of that. And so, Chris, I hope you would echo, what it is that I'm saying, that if the person is listening, I mean, for God's sake, and if this poor woman is still with us, she needs medical care quickly. And I hope and pray that she's okay. Chris, what are your thoughts? I mean, I assume it would be similar to that, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well said. I mean, there's no sense in dovetailing into it. You nailed it. I think tomorrow is going to be a big day. That's going to be my prediction. And
More to the story, that's for sure.
We're going to get a lot more answers. And if the feds are on the ground, then they're going to give us a lot more. So two things I want to say. Thank you guys all for being here. We had well over 4,000 folks here tonight, and we're grateful for that. We thank you for that. Please hit if right now there's 3,900, almost 4,000 people in chat. If everybody hit that thumb up, that will move the algorithm, and which always helps our channel. And we're grateful for you. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do that. We only ask that one thing. With that, everybody take care of each other. Akamai, meaning pay attention.
And remember, Chris, if the person is out there listening, this is 2026. You're not going to get away with it. You don't get away with stuff that easily in 2026. This is not a master criminal.
Yeah.
It should be scared.
Take care of her. Number one, take care of her. Right. Aloha, everybody. See you on the next one. Thank you, mods. Thank you, subscribers. See you on the next one.
Thanks for having me.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away.